Kevin Tharp here. This is case study 1, the video to support step number 3, the HTML. What we're going to do here is we're going to create a new HTML document. There's a number of ways to do that. I have previously set it up so that the default HTML document that I'm going to create is an HTML5 doc type. The right way that I did this is by going into the preferences and I set the default document type to HTML5 for this course. That's what we're going to be using all the time. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it. And you'll see that by HTML5. Now, that said, there's more than one way to do that. I can do File, New, which is what I just did, and then I've got a series of options here. Blank page HTML is what we want to do. And again, make sure it's set to HTML5. Later on, we'll be using the same thing as a template, so you'll be able to create a page from a template. But right now, there are no items, there are no templates available. So we're going to just do a blank page so that we can get the core HTML in there. The other way that I could do it is by clicking the Create New HTML, and because I've got the HTML5 set up as a doc type, then it's going to automatically do that for me. So what I want to do is I've got the core elements here. I've got the doc type declaration, I've got the HTML tags open and closing, I've got the head tags open and closing, and inside that I've got a meta character set of UTF-8, and I've got a document title of untitled document. And untitled document, there's nothing that says unprofessional like having a website that says untitled document. So the first thing that I want you to do is go ahead and change this. Now in Dreamweaver you can change it by typing into the code window, or you can change it by clicking into the title element. Now you can't affect it over here. This is the design window, and because this is in the head tag, the title is in the head tag, you can't affect it from the design window. So we either need to work from this element right here, or this, or type it right into the code. And whichever place you type it, it's going to show up in both locations. So I'm just going to call this Community Garden. And I'm going to do a refresh on that, and you'll notice that up here it comes to Community Garden. And so that's the head tag, and then we have the body tag. The body tag, everything that sits between this opening and closing body tag is the realm of this over here. Now in the support documents for this case study, you will see that I have put a wireframe in there, and we are going to duplicate that wireframe from a code standpoint in HTML. So we're going to build the structure for the different things that are seen in here. Now on the outside is body. We don't need to replicate that because that is the body tag that is indicated in the HTML. It is a required element, and so we don't have to duplicate that. The next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to want to put a header in there, and inside of that header there's going to want to be navigation. After that, outside of the header, then we're going to want to do main content and footer, and we're going to use the HTML5 semantic markup for the header and the footer. So we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. So what we need to do is we need to come in here and we need to insert some elements to start building the structure of this thing. Okay, now the header tag that we're going to use is a HTML5 tag. It wasn't there in HTML4, and so it's not natively immediately available inside my insert tag, which is where I would normally add, I would choose common elements and I would insert a tag. We used to use a div tag and we would give it an ID of header, but now HTML5 has come along, so we can just add a header. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come into this code view, and again you can see that I prefer to work in this split just because, but I'm going to go ahead and insert the header tag and the closing tag. And you notice that it automatically, when I did the /, it noticed that I needed to close the header tag, so I went ahead and put that element in there. And I'm going to buy myself a little room just because I like to work in a visual way. And then if you recall from the diagram that we were working with, we are also inside of the header, we're going to have a navigation tag. So we're going to want to come in here, and the whoops, it helps to spell it right. Selected the nav tag and closing nav tag, and that still doesn't show us anything on the design views. So what I'm going to do just for now is I'm going to type header inside of there, and when I refresh this you'll see that it says header up there, and I'm going to type nav there just so that I've got some holder tags so that we can see what's going on until we actually start creating the header and the navigation. So the next thing that we're going to want to add to that from a structural perspective is that I want to add a div called main content, and I want to add a footer element. So the reason we're adding a you may have heard me say that we're adding the footer element and a div tag for the main content. Footer and header are now defined elements in HTML5, whereas they weren't before. And so we can just go in and put footer and I'm just going to put some text in there again so that I know where that is, and it recognizes that as an element. It's not going to recognize my main content as an element. So what I need to do instead is I need to insert a div. Now here I'm going to go to the insert menu, and I'm going to use this as an ID. Now we haven't really got into IDs versus classes yet, but we will talk about that quite a bit later on. An ID has to be unique in the page. A class can be used over and over again. So I'm going to do main content just as because that's what it needs to be called. If I was doing, say, a image gallery and I wanted to have thumbnail image, I could do thumb image or whatever as a class, and I could apply that properties to that class, presentation properties to that class in the CSS, and that would apply to every rule. Whereas if it's ID, it can only be on that page one time. There can only be one instance. Whereas I might have 10 thumbnail images, I'm only going to have one instance of main content. And so you got to make sure that you're using the right tool, whether it's a class or an ID. It follows into the rule of form follows function. The function of class is to allow you to have multiple instances of that kind of content on the page. The function of an ID is to ensure that there's only one of that type of content on the page. So I create that, and you'll notice that it automatically created this div. It's got the main content, which I typed in there. It put holder text in there, and it closed my div for me. So when I take a look at this, it really doesn't show me a whole lot. You can see the square around the div. I've got my header, my nav, and my footer. But from a structural standpoint, that is what is required for this. So we've got the header, the navigation in it called nav. We've got the main content, and then we have the footer. And that is the core that's going to be identical, the same from a structural standpoint on all of these elements. Now what we'll need to do is we'll need to create the content that goes in those, but that is easy. Once you have the structure in place, all you do is put whatever content you need inside of that structure.